Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to What Remains of Edith Finch, Episode 2. As you can see, it's a bit different this time. Uh, it's already recorded and edited. That is because my mic, when I recorded originally, my mic was not functioning, so there was no commentary, but I figured go ahead and edit it anyway, and since I couldn't re-record it, and everything be spoiled, because bringing up the book would show everything, I decided to do something a little different. This episode's different in a couple of ways. One of them being I have a guest star, one of my best friends by the name of Steven. Steven, tell everybody hello.
Hey everybody, this is Steven.
In this video, we're gonna go over. We're gonna have the video playing in the background, and we're gonna talk about a particular theory that nobody's laying claim to it, but we've done our research and everything, and we're gonna talk about it today. Make it as interesting as we can. We're gonna go and start the video. And Steven, do you want to start, or do you want me to start and kind of bring everybody into it?
I'll let you have the first one.
Okay, the theory that we're going to be going over. The first one is that the entirety of the Finch family is suffers from some sort of mental disorder or mental illness. I might lower this real quick. Door's not too loud. The theory, the evidence behind this is
I promise.
Edie, the matriarch, great grandma Edie. In one part of the video,
Perfect.
you'll see her go to the old house when the tide goes out. She's seeing things, and things that she can't explain. And this is whenever she wasn't as old. So it might have been dementia, it could have been, but this further proves the theory. The reason behind that is when she goes to the house, the old house that sank when her father bought the house over, she was seeing things that should have been either washed away or rotted out or any number of things. But when she gets to the actual house, lights start appearing, but that's all we hear of it because whenever Edith is reading the book that Edie wrote her, Edith's mom takes the book away and we don't hear anymore.
I'm not always going to be here, Don.
And that was when I first was watching that part. I got a little confused and whatnot. The next one, and I'm gonna get your opinion on this one, Stephen. Lewis, Edith's older brother.
Doesn't being out here make you want to chill?
You want to go and talk about that part?
Yes, the part with Lewis. Yeah, we see him pretty much imagining a world all around him. Meanwhile, he can, for whatever reason, still see the fish that he's doing his job with. But it seems like he's experiencing all these strange things that, to him, probably look incredibly real. It's brought up that his family tried to talk to him, but he would just disassociate from them and pretty much just kept living in his own world, all the while chopping the heads off of fish.
One thing that really stood out to me is during Lewis's whole part, which we will see later on in this video, is he's telling his therapist that he's not happy with how his life's turning out, with he feels responsible for his brother Milton's disappearance, which again we will go over that in great detail, as you'll see. That was really the start, because from what Edith said and about everything, he would just be really quiet and would keep to himself a lot in his room or in his area of the house. One of the things he tells his therapist whenever she's starting to get really concerned about his daydreaming is, he said, "My imagination is as real as my body." To me, that means whenever he's daydreaming and whenever he's fantasizing and, disassociating, what he's imagining he believes is real.
Sam spent his life
And
taking photos, but Mom said
and it gets to a
Roger was
point
gonna
where
put the
he
camera.
says that
I
he
guess
was
we're all afraid of
envious
something.
of his imaginary self. What do you take from that, Stephen? Before we get any farther into this particular one, the phrase "my imagination is as real as my body."
Instead of hiding
I
from
think,
death, Sam seemed to go out of his way
I
to
think
be
for him,
there.
just the way he sees the world, everything in his imagination, he's unable to differentiate between, back and forth between, like, what he's seeing in his mind and what he's actually seeing in the real world.
Because the truly sad part about his particular part in that you get to play as in the story is you don't see you're playing through the part and listening to the letter that his therapist sent to his mom after his, as you can assume, his death. It gets really sad because you can see his continuing mental decline, because the more his mental health
After
goes
Sam
down, the
died,
more real
my
his
mom and Edith
imagination
got really
gets.
close. They
And it
both
gets
lost a
to,
lot.
because it starts off as top down and just little daydreaming like everybody does. I've done it, and I'm sure you've done it when you're working or you're doing something, Steven.
Oh, yes.
But
Uh,
his gets to, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, most of the time, it was always the work.
Yeah, I can't lie, I am too. Uh, Gonna kind of interrupt myself real quick. This particular section, Gregory's, it is very triggering because, as you can see from the dates, Gregory is a baby, and this section could be triggering for some people. If you are not comfortable with watching this or experiencing this, please skip forward and
Dear Kay,
just
do you remember the way
skip this
Gregory
part
used to laugh when he thought
because
he
it's
was a little
very upsetting for many people.
Yeah, we'll put a timestamp in here, right?
Yeah, I'll put a timestamp before and after. This section is also muted, as you saw, because the song that's playing is extremely copyrighted, and YouTube does not like that. But continuing on talking about Lewis, you see his mental decline at work because his mom basically forced him to get a job at the canning factory, and when you're working a job that you don't like or you no longer enjoy, your mental health does not do well, because you'll do anything because you have to work it, or you feel like you have to work it, but you also feel like you also want to get away in some way, shape, or form. Most of the time it's daydreaming, and it's just a little escape, but if you continue to work that, it will start to affect your health. Lewis was affected by not only his brother going missing, but every member of his family dying in some way, shape, or form. He heard he's heard all these stories from Edie, who has told Edith these stories, and has told Lewis and Milton, and everybody has heard these stories about their family dying, or by some accident, or experiencing some tragedy, and even not experiencing it firsthand, just knowing that every member of your family has not gotten to live a full life will mess with you after a while. And Lewis, feeling like he was forced to work a job he was not happy with, kept falling farther and farther into his imaginary world that he has created. He was in this world. It doesn't say specifically, but I would assume he was in this world for months, if not years. Which is why he was so enamored and so obsessed with being in this world. You have any opinions on that?
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things, just the escapism after tragedy. People tend to disassociate. So, what started off as just a small way to cope turned into an unhealthy measure.
Because there are warning signs, but for that particular type of mental health problem, it's difficult to see if you're not looking for it. Because as Edith says in Lewis's section, you always know that, you always notice, or they always knew that Lewis spent a lot of, if he wasn't at work, he was in his room. And if he wasn't in his room, he was doing drugs, whether it was, you mainly see pot, and I'm not trying to say pot is a gateway drug, but it's a way for him to escape, and he did go, at first it seems like he sought out therapy for his substance abuse, and him relying on the pot and smoking would essentially mean that he didn't that he wouldn't have to worry about fantasizing and daydreaming about his imaginary world, because to my knowledge he hadn't, or what the game basically tells you, he stopped smoking when he was working at the factory, because I'm assuming drug tests and everything like that. When he stopped smoking, when he was forced to stop smoking, he didn't have that escape anymore. He didn't have that way to like numb his brain and get away from it. And him not having that was really the final nail in the coffin. No dark joke intended.
For Gus.
But it's really something that hit me hard when I first played through the game, experiencing Lewis's section, because his was very unique, and I feel like everybody who's worked a job they utterly hate has felt like that in one way or another. I'm sure you have. I know for a fact I have.
My father made him come, of course, but Gus stood far apart.
Because for anybody that doesn't know me, I worked at a prison for a while, and that job was awful. But you need money, so you feel like you gotta work.
But though he'd never met her, need a stepmom.
The next theory we're talking about is it's very interesting. And we'll get to that whenever, because I believe Milton's section is next. So we're just gonna recap what we talked about and kind of expand on the different things.
The time for photos came.
Till we get to Milton's section, because his is most likely gonna take up the rest of the video. What is your opinion on what I was saying at the beginning? Great Grandma Edie having some sort of mental issue, because it's clearly not dementia, because she knows where she's at. She's fully aware of where she's at, who she is, and who all's around her. But as you can see in the background where the red light is, that's the old house, and it's under the ocean. It has been for who knows how many years at this point, at that particular point in time.
I believe there is a strong case for Grandma Edie having some form of a mental illness. It's also stated in her section, though, that she's taking medication. When it's brought up that she shouldn't be drinking while on the medication, it could also have just been that it was a hallucination caused by both alcohol and the medicine combined. How they're not supposed to be.
Oh, well, her particular flashback didn't happen. I'm sure she was on medication at the time, but her particular section didn't happen where she goes to the old house. That was like years ago. It doesn't say specifically when. It just says there was an earthquake in the middle of the ocean, and the tide went so far down that she could walk to the old house.
Just you, the wind, the sea, and
okay, I gotcha. Yeah, when I saw that part, I kind of interpreted that one as that was something that happened recently.
Yeah, it doesn't really give you a timeline. I'm at least assuming that it was years ago, because she was walking without any assistance like a walker or a cane or anything like that. She's just hopping right along and getting to where she needs to go.
Sure, but that could also be leveraged against the whole thing with the hallucination.
Well, true, because as you can see, Grandma Edie was born in 1917, and that makes her up there. She's in her 90s at least. Something a little funny that you see here on the board. It has their different times and duties. Dawn's is sweeping trash, Gus's is to mop and mow the yard, and Greg's is to be a baby. Just something a little funny, I think. Something I think people would find a little funny here and there. But I definitely think that there is some sort of genetic mental problem going on with these. Maybe not genetic or...
At the time, it was as far away as
But there's definitely some mental issue being passed down to certain members of the family because every member of the family having a particular
she spent a summer building houses in Calcutta,
issue,
where she
like
met my
you
dad,
have
Sanjay.
like you have Molly, the first person you whose death you get to learn about. She was basically, that could be like she ate mistletoe, so that could be like her dying like vision or her hallucinating while dying or whatever. But hers, you become a cat, you become a bird, a shark, a weird like creature from the deep. You become a lot of things. And the way she's talking about it and writing about it was strange. It was
when my dad died,
it was like she was experiencing it firsthand. So that could be. Do you think that was like her seeing stuff while dying,
and to see kids
or
in the
do you
house
think
again.
it's her her hallucinating stuff? Well, what do you think that particular section?
I think it could also be like the mind just coming up with like something to cope with the fact that it can tell that body's not supposed to eat mistletoe. That this isn't gonna end well. I do think it could just be like a coping mechanism of the mind, just try and like make the last moments feel happier as well.
And
it could also just be triggering the mental illness as well. Just where the body's not able to keep up with itself anymore. Anything that was suppressing the mind isn't really working anymore.
Because it makes it all extremely interesting. And we are at the section that is the main topic of this particular video, Milton's death. I'm gonna back the video up just a second.
Of the end was Milton's 10th birthday.
I know you see what I'm gonna pause it on. That particular logo, remember that, because we don't have access to the game that is connected to Edith Finch. We don't have access to it as of yet, but I'll try to get in video clips or pictures or something like that to support our theory and everything. But Milton's death is the most suspicious and most confusing because he technically didn't die here. Because Milton's, as you can see, he's very artistic. He's very you've seen his drawings throughout the whole game. You see the door, you see the footprints, the paint, newspapers. He even lives in a little castle tower. That's his room. He has a view of everything. He's got artwork everywhere, brushes, and he's even got a little crown. And we're gonna let y'all see his section before anything. See, he paints a door, bows, and then disappears. And that's the last they ever saw of Milton. The reason why we wanted y'all to see his section, it's not very long, and you see that they have a date of death, but that's more of a date he went missing. Milton was about, what was that, about 9 years old, give or take?
Yes.
The reason being is confirmed by the creative director of both this game and the Unfinished Swan. The king in the Unfinished Swan, which I'll put up a little clip or a picture of him on the screen here,
Then she sealed the doors.
he is in fact the king in the Unfinished Swan. You hear him, you see him, and you see the little logo with the crown and the mustache.
Found in the house. Mom didn't want it getting out.
The reason that Milton disappeared is we think that he also has an issue with disassociating from reality to such a degree that I believe the night that he disappeared, he was hallucinating or we're just wandering around somewhere and nobody could find him. So so being the family curse, they just assume he had died.
Mom definitely blamed Edie, but
do you want to read the go over the next paragraph in our notes, or do you want me to?
After he graduated, he just spent.
I'll let you be the main voice. But I will bring up. I believe it's in the prequel game, or the previous game, because I guess technically this one's the prequel. Maybe.
Yeah. This one's definitely the prequel to the Unfinished Swan.
Yeah. The king describes himself whenever he left his home, that he wandered into a world that was just pure white, and he couldn't really see anything. So I think that further lends to the whole thing of when he left the house, he was completely disassociated from everything and was just stuck wandering to what him seemed like a white void.
So, as Steven just brought up, Milton, or the king, and when we're talking about Milton in Edith Finch, we'll say Milton. When we're talking about him in Unfinished Swan, we'll say the king, to make it less confusing.
Alright, sounds good.
We don't know all that much about Milton, other than the fact that he was extremely creative, he was extremely artistic, and this is all obviously just a theory. But he could have had something similar to schizophrenia, which from what I understand, I'm not a therapist, I don't know a lot about this. You have trouble being able to tell what's real and what's imaginary, what's not real.
As I said, the trouble began in January.
I believe, or we believe, that the hallucinations caused him to, as Steven said, to wander off and into a white void where he couldn't tell where anything was at. So maybe when he left, he couldn't find the door. Like his actual door to get back inside. So he just assumed that the door he had painted, because that's the last thing he painted before he disappeared, was a magic door.
In our sessions, I saw the same behavior.
I believe that his mental illness went undiagnosed for so long that he was not able to tell when he was hallucinating and when he wasn't. When he painted the door and it opened, I'm assuming that his door opened up, or he opened up the door, and he thought that the door he had painted opened up, causing him to believe that his paintbrush was magic. When he went through the magic door,
then something moved.
He saw a white void and he didn't like it, so he started painting things here and there, and he believed that he was in a magical garden.
And things that have not names.
And who knows how long he was gone for? His perception of time is so... we don't know what his perception of time is. Because in the Unfinished Swan, the king is talking about the night he left, he wandered into a garden, and the citizens of his kingdom that he had created were tired of bumping, were tired of tripping, falling, knocking things over, because they couldn't see, so he painted shadows. And in the Unfinished Swan, when the shadows are painted, you see that you're in a massive kingdom, like unbelievably large, and there's a labyrinth, there's statues everywhere, there's a bust of the king's head, which would take away the mustache and the beard. It looks a lot like Milton.
Like a whole new Lewis.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, just keep the crown.
So I let him go on.
The king, and whenever you're playing through the Unfinished Swan, you're playing as...
I even encouraged him.
What is believed to be Milton's son. And he is a real boy. He does in fact exist. But the theory that we're talking about is that Milton is the king, and Milton is also the father of Monroe, the main person you play as in the Unfinished Swan.
On the edge of a city, he named
and
Lewis
the way that game begins is the Monroe's mother passed away and she had
Then he
over
made musicians.
what was it, 300 unfinished pieces.
Yeah, I don't think it ever even brings up a single finished piece of hers.
And all of her pieces are missing something.
Songs for them
Like
to play.
there's a tree that doesn't have any leaves. There's a house
about
without a
starting
roof.
back.
There's you just see little glimpses of different paintings here and there. But
And he
the
was
one
always
that they
humming
give
something.
Monroe the opportunity to pick one
Every
painting,
day his
and the painting he
imagination
picked
grew
was his
stronger.
mother's favorite, the title of the game, The Unfinished Swan. The swan has a body, it has a
He no
head, but
longer
it's missing a
spoke at
section of
times.
its neck. And Monroe
But
chooses
his
that
chopping
one.
was as reliable as ever.
And Monroe
And one day it
hears,
struck
like,
him.
he takes the painting back to the orphanage, and when he hears the
All
swan
the cheering
talking,
crowds, even the
and, or
stones under
talking,
his feet,
he hears the swan, and he sees it, and it flies out the
were
window,
all
so
in
he
his
follows it.
imagination.
And that's how the game starts.
So he could do whatever he wished.
And but you go through and all that, and we'll go over everything, or as much as we can, until for the theory. But Monroe ends up talking to the king. The king was talking about how his kingdom was being taken over by vines, and
They begged him to stay.
and he built his
mind
kingdom
was
to
already
last
wandering.
for lifetimes, and it's going to be taken over in a
It
few
became a
short
game.
weeks. I believe that whenever the king is saying that his kingdom got taken over by vines,
Conquer a city, then immediately
that's
push on.
Milton seeing the old Finch house.
New Louisville.
Because at that point in time, either Edith is already, spoiler alert by the way, Edith is already
St.
dead
Louis.
and nobody's at the house, or he was there at the point in time where
started
Edith was
drifting away
and her
from
mom
our
was
reality.
gone and nobody was at the house still. Seeing that, like, vines have grown over it, and seeing that he could have possibly
Until
been having
one day he
another
forgot to go home
episode
from Hannah.
and was like, my kingdom is being destroyed, so
Even as his mother
he
pleaded
wanders
Half
away.
Louis kept sailing on.
He says, the king's talked about that when he found his way home, everybody already left the house, like I said, and it was
Louis-
dark, so he could
he
have
heard
he could
rumors
have
of
been it could have been nighttime when he got there. He could have wandered until it was nighttime, but it was
Handsome
saying that
queen.
he had floated past chunks of his home. That could mean that he somehow got on the ocean where the old house was, and he was seeing pieces of the old house.
The queen was on her own
And
quest
he
for
the another part of the theory is that I'll let
Sinister
Steven go over the part
serpents.
talking about the trauma, his Milton's trauma and whatnot, and how he could possibly just have been not in control of his perception of
Followed the
reality
sound of her.
when talking or when meeting his girlfriend or wife. I'll go ahead and let you talk about that part.
silver harp.
Yeah. So the king, he found himself a wife, who he described also as an artist, and as you can see from her unfinished work, all her unfinished work in the game, she very much so was an artist. So he found someone who he thought was perfect, and decided he wanted to make his life perfect. So he went ahead, and it's described in the game that he's trying to build the perfect house for his wife and his family, but he keeps making the house and he's not happy with it. So then he scraps it, and so he starts building up blueprints for a new house. But then he finds something else he doesn't like and he scraps it. And this goes on and on and on, to the point where at this point they're risking pretty much just not having anywhere to live because nothing meets his standard. So it's stated that the wife ends up taking running away with Monroe, I think while she was late in the pregnancy, was it?
Yeah, Monroe was not born whenever his queen or his wife left. She was very late in the pregnancy, so he was it doesn't say, but we can assume that he was born shortly after, since Monroe does know about his father but has never met him at that point in time.
My imagination is as real as my body, he told me. It was hard to argue with him.
The way that the Unfinished Swan ended is Monroe's talking to the king. And we don't know if this is... it doesn't tell you, or we don't know if this is Monroe dreaming about what she told him about his father, or if this is Monroe actually talking to his father. It's not. We're not sure. But it does say that the king is, exploring his kingdom, seeing vines and ink and spots of paint everywhere. This could mean that he. But he does say that he's dying, that he could feel himself dying, and one section is he's at his own funeral. But I don't think that this is an actual death. It's more of like after his wife had left him, he realized that his
I could save him.
obsession with finding perfection in every single thing that he made, painted, or created was ruined his relationship with his wife. And once she left, he had no reason to create anymore, because he couldn't create for his wife, he couldn't create for his son, he couldn't create for his family because the Finches are all gone.
I do think his wife leaving him also triggered in his mind, because he was, as you said, he was unable to create any more art. He couldn't make anything that he deemed as good enough, which it seemed like he was only striving for perfection. And I think when his wife left, it kind of shattered that perfect world of his, made him remember like all the trauma he had gone through with the deaths in his family and the family curse.
Yeah, and then once he realizes why, like, how he was wrong with his obsession with perfection, he gives Monroe his quote-unquote magic paintbrush, which is the paintbrush that you saw in Milton's section, the white paintbrush that the painting had. And Monroe, the very first thing that Monroe does is something not to please his father, but something that his mother would have wanted him to do, which is he finished the Swan. When Monroe finished the Swan, he keeps his, in that way, he keeps his mother and father's creative visions and everything alive through that painting, because his mother left the painting unfinished, possibly so that Monroe or the king could finish it. When Monroe finished the painting, he made it quote-unquote perfect, which would have pleased the king, and he finished it because his mother would have most likely wanted him to be creative like her and his father. Milton, or the king, he could have trauma-induced PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder, for those who don't know what that is. From not being able to cope with the death of his family, from seeing, reading, and hearing so many of his family members dying. He created a world in the Unfinished Swan where death doesn't exist. Nobody dies in the Unfinished Swan. They get washed away. They leave. They get taken somewhere. But nobody ever dies. And he was in control of everything, which this led to his obsession with perfection. And when his wife left him. Oh God, sorry, my notes disappeared for a sec. When his wife left with their unborn child, all the feelings he had kept like pushed down and blocked in his mind came back, causing his perfect world to have imperfections like the vines growing, the paint splotches, his house falling apart, and it led to him not being able to finish any of his artwork because he could no longer make them perfect. And the things he had created that were perfect had imperfections. And this could have led him to realizing that imperfections are okay. But when he realized that imperfections were a part of art, he realized that it was too late to make up with his wife because he didn't know where she was at, or he heard about her passing. And he gives his son the paintbrush, which basically leaves both Monroe and the player with the message of the story that imperfections are a part of art. Something that was built to last forever will inevitably be surpassed by something that is even more perfect. It's not the art that lasts, it's the feelings that art gave the ones who saw it. And just because you want to make something perfect doesn't mean it will be perfect. Because what you see as perfect, somebody else could see as imperfect. And that's pretty much the theory. Anything else you wanna bring up, Steven?
Yeah, just back with the imperfection stuff. It's just even going through life, may always strive for all the perfection. You might always strive for just perfection, but imperfections are kind of an inevitability. Uh, just, I think as the king himself, he said something similar, I believe, in the Unfinished One, that like if you don't ever attempt something because you don't think it'll be perfect, then you'll pretty much go through life without doing anything.
Yeah, because when you come across the king in the Unfinished Swan, he's just sitting there in a statue he was creating to be perfect, but he stopped working on it. And he's just sitting there by the fire with the first imaginary friend he had made after he had left the Finch house, being a giant hippo, because
Why not?
exactly. And Milton's story led me to realize what I believe to be the message of Edith Finch, because Milton, you could perceive that as he lived longer than any of the other ones, not including Edie, but he lived longer than any of his brothers or sisters, because the meaning, what I feel like is the message of Edith Finch is, it's better to have a short life that you enjoyed than a long life of survival. Meaning, an example of this is, look at Edie. She lived to be, as you saw from that picture, to be in her 90s. But she had seen so many people die. She'd seen so many people leave. Her daughter wanted nothing to do with her, as you're seeing here. Her daughter wanted nothing to do with her, and her daughter blamed her for the death of her children, because Edie kept passing on the stories of their different family members. And Milton Edith had a short life, but it was a meaningful life. She enjoyed it. She got to learn more about her brothers and the rest of her family. She got to learn more about her mother and about Edie. She got to learn more about everybody, but she didn't live to be that old. She lived to be maybe 18. Edie, however, lived to be 90, and she never really moved on from her trauma, from the loss of her family. It seems like she has embraced it, but as you can see, having the room sealed up, having what you could perceive as mementos of the different family members could be perceived as her obsessing with it and not being able to move past it. What Edith and her mom have done is truly move past the deaths of everybody in the family, even her brothers. They have moved past them, and they have accepted that they're gone, and that obsessing over it isn't going to bring them back.
My children are because of your stories.
And as you could hear,
If Edith and I leave tonight.
Edith's mom talking to Edie.
Okay.
Edie wants to share the stories with Edith.
Dear Edith.
But her mom,
many stories
again,
I wish I could tell you.
Edie having told all of her, both of her sons
This is
about these stories, led them to either go missing like Milton or dying like Lewis.
The tide went way out.
You think that pretty much sums up the message of this game?
Last time
That there's a
house
difference between living a long life and living a full
there'd been
life.
an earthquake out in
Yes, I agree with your assessment.
And this is the section we were talking about at the beginning. This is what led me to believe that Edie has some sort of hallucinogenic or hallucination
I've seen
mental
that
disorder
house
that's
every
causing her to
day
see
of
things
my
and
life.
and even hear things. 'Cause these could be perceived as both audio as visual hallucinations and audio hallucinations.
Yeah.
Because I think if the tide has gone this far out,
Lost my way.
doesn't that mean that there's a tidal wave?
I think, yes, tidal wave, tsunami. But if you can see from walking around there, you don't really see, besides like some puddles of water, you don't really see all that much evidence that this area has been submerged underwater.
Cause you saw what could have been a dock. There's a deer down here. There's different pieces of the house that if it's been down here since the early 1900s, should not be here. They should have been either washed away or dry rotted or something.
Or at least coated in like a ton of algae.
Because there's a bed, it looks perfectly fine.
They felt like old
There's
friends.
chairs, shelves, sewing machines, stoves, things that should not
Or maybe
have survived this long. And the main crux of the theory,
And then
a
gate
perfectly
with a little
intact
pink
gate
image.
and
things
the
I
house.
can't explain, but that I need you to try and
Edith, what are you doing in here?
It's mine.
Edith.
And
Mom, you're gonna rip it. Let go.
it's a very unique theory, and the only confirmation that we have is
Mom
about
dragged me to the
some sort of
car.
mental
I never saw Great Grandma Edie again.
condition being passed down is Edie, Lewis, and
Next
Milton.
morning, the band came to pick her
Because
up.
those are the only
She
ones
was
that you can clearly see they have some sort of disassociation from
After that,
reality.
we moved around a lot.
And Milton's story is really bringing up the biggest part of
We
this
both
whole
tried to make the
theory.
best of it.
But yes, there are some holes you can poke in it, like Edith doesn't seem to have any hallucinations or anything like that. Her mom does not seem to have any hallucinations or anything like that. So it could be genetic, or it could be they've developed some sort of mental disorder from
My mom
so
told
much
me.
trauma to do with the stories, and it's just their mind trying to
But
cope
she started
with
getting sick
so
a
much
lot.
loss in their life. You think
The rest
that
happened pretty
that
quickly.
could be a good assessment or a good summarization of
She
everything?
got better for a while.
Yeah, I think that's a good. I think it's good summarization.
And then,
You wanna go over anything, or you wanna let the viewers watch the rest of the
and then I was alone.
Edith Finch? And before anybody says anything, yes, this is exactly what you think it is.
Last Finch left alive.
And you'll see what I mean if you have not seen this particular section, Steven. I know somebody's gonna mention
I
it.
found out about you.
I figured I'd call it out now.
I'm still
And
not
there
sure what to
is
tell you about all
there is
this.
one small thing I want to bring up to the end
If we lived forever,
that I did
maybe
think
we'd
of
have time
partway
to
through
understand
recording.
things.
Oh, go right ahead then.
But as it is,
Oh, we got to
I
get to
think
the part.
best we can do is try to
I was
open
gonna
our
leave it
eyes
open for you to say anything you wanted, or to just watch what's going
and
on.
appreciate how strange.
I say we
and
let the
unique
viewers
this is.
just enjoy the ending.
This journal was supposed to be for you. But now I hope you'll never see it. I just want to meet you and tell you all these stories myself. But I guess if you're reading this now, things didn't work out that way.
This is where your story begins. I'm sorry I won't be there to see it. It's a lot to ask, but I don't want you to be sad that I'm gone. I want you to be amazed that any of us ever had a chance to be here at all. Good luck.
Something that I did think of partway through. Do you think that it's possible that Milton never did have a son, that he maybe saw or has met Edith's son and just assumed? And like he imagined the whole thing with his with having a wife and building the house. You think that could be a thing, or you think I'm just grasping at straws here?
I don't know. That might be a theory that maybe we can bring up whenever you go through the Unfinished Swan.
Which I for sure am going to go through that, because it's such a satisfying game. From what we saw, it looks to be like very interesting, and when I do get it, because I believe it's available on PC. If not, I'll find some way to record it or to get footage of it. But yeah, this is our theory. If you like it, feel free to like, comment any corrections or any add-ons that you want to add to the story or the theory or anything like that. Thank you for joining me and making this video, Steven.
Anytime, man.
And
Great to be here.
And thank you everybody for watching.
Oh, there's that boat as well.
Yes, that boat. You will see that boat in The Unfinished Swan. I completely forgot about that in the credits, but I was telling you about that when we were watching through it.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you everybody for watching. Have a wonderful day.